Okay, so first when we're solving these equations, you have to work this out. Multiply it all together and all of that first. So on the left side, we're going to FOIL. So we have 3m squared minus 10m minus 12m plus 40. On the right side, we're going to distribute the 3. So we get 3m minus 6, and we still have that plus 18. Then combine like terms on each side. So I can combine these. So we have 3m squared minus 22m plus 40. And then we can combine negative 6 plus 18, so we get 3m plus 12. Next thing you need to do, because this has the m squared in it, you need to get everything to that side so that you can factor or use the quadratic formula now that we know that. So subtract 3m and subtract 12. So we get 3m squared minus 25m plus 28 is equal to 0 now. At this point, you can factor or you can use a quadratic formula. I'm going to choose to use the quadratic formula, but you could try to factor it first. But since this section is on the quadratic formula and you guys already know how to factor, we're going to do the quadratic formula. So let me move this up. Okay, so remember that the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Sorry, this is messy. So a is the number in front of m squared. So this is a. B is in front of m, and c is the number by itself. So we're going to substitute those in. So I've got x equals negative, and then b is negative 25 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So b is negative 25 squared minus 4 times a is 3, and c is 28. And that's all over 2 times a, which was 3. All right, then you're going to simplify. So these two negatives here make this a positive 25 plus or minus. Square root, negative 25 squared is 625. And then I always multiply this all the way across. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12 times 28 is negative 336. And that's all over 6. All right, then we subtract what's underneath. So when you subtract that, you get 289 over 6. Okay, so then we need to simplify the square root. If you simplify square root of 289, you end up with 17. So we have 25 plus or minus square root, whoops, sorry, not square root, just 17, because the square root of 289 is 17, and that's all over 6. So two things. First of all, because we don't have a square root or an I left, that means we could have factored this problem to start with. Then, because you don't have a square root or an I left, you need to go ahead and actually simplify this. So if you had a square root or an I, you couldn't separate these into two different answers and simplify them. But because they are just numbers, I can add those two together and subtract them. So we're going to have two different answers here. I'm going to have x equals 25 plus 17 over 6. And then we're also going to have x equals 25 minus 17 over 6. So when you simplify that, 25 plus 17 is 42 over 6, which means we get 7 as the first answer. And then when you do 25 minus 17, you get 8. So we have 8 over 6. Reduce that by 2. And we end up with 4/3. So your answers are 7 and 4/3.